Ukraine has seen this before: naval blockades, drones attacking simultaneously. This is also what Russia did against them. And now Iran is doing this in the Gulf. But for Ukraine, all of that was enough. After Iran helped Russia with drones, they are now ready to retaliate. And what's more surprising is that these are not just words. They are already taking concrete steps to help open the Strait of Hormuz. They are using what they learned in the Black Sea, where they made things difficult for the Russian Navy using drones and other simple methods. Under the leadership of Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine has started to reach out to several countries in the Middle East. During his visit there, he said that almost all of the discussions revolved around the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and how to deal with it. These countries have a big problem. If the strait is closed, they can't sell oil and gas. This directly affects their economy. This is where Ukraine comes in. They have experience in dealing with this kind of situation. In the Black Sea, they found a way to get through even with threats from Russia. They used drones, fast boats, and simple tactics to weaken the enemy. And now they're sharing that knowledge. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. According to Zelensky, countries in the Middle East know that they can rely on Ukraine when it comes to this kind of problem. They have already seen how Ukraine succeeded in opening a passage in the Black Sea, so they want to learn the same method. But this is not just about helping. For Ukraine, this is also an opportunity to build stronger ties with wealthy countries. These countries have the capability to help them, especially in their fight against Russia. In other words, two things are happening. Ukraine is helping with the problem in the Strait of Hormuz, while at the same time strengthening its own position in the world. And if you look at it, there's a reason why they are the ones being approached in this kind of situation. Nowadays, only a few have this kind of experience. And one of the clearest examples is Ukraine. On March 21, Andriy Sybiga said that what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz is painfully familiar to Ukraine. According to him, Russia has already done this in the Black Sea. They blocked maritime trade to weaken Ukraine's economy and gain an advantage in the conflict. This is true. Almost from the very beginning of Vladimir Putin's invasion, Russia blocked Ukraine's ports in the Black Sea. The method may be different compared to Iran, but the effect is the same. Russia used large warships from their Black Sea fleet, while Iran uses small boats, missiles, and drones. But for Ukraine, the result is the same. They lost a huge amount of income, reaching around $20 billion per year. A large part of this came from exporting grain to Asia and Africa. But they didn't stop there. They found a way to recover. Ukraine used long-range missiles like the Storm Shadow to hit large ships, Russian ships. At the same time, they made naval drones like Magura and Sea Baby. They used these to attack Russian ships, whether in port or in the middle of the sea. As time goes by, these drones are getting even better. Now they can also carry missiles and FPV drones. This means they can hit targets farther away and with more accuracy. Little by little, Russia's strength in the Black Sea has been reduced. The fleet that was once feared has been reduced by almost a third. Many of their ships have retreated because of the continuous threat from Ukraine's drones. And now, the situation is different. Even though there is still a threat, cargo ships are now able to enter Ukraine's ports, especially in Odessa. Up to 200 ships pass through every month. This became possible because Ukraine didn't just attack. They also found ways to protect the ships while they were traveling. Here, we see an important lesson. Attacking alone is not enough. This needs to be accompanied by defense and a good plan. And this is what the countries in the Gulf want to achieve. They are losing money because of Iran's blockades. That's why they want to use the same method that Ukraine used in the Black Sea. According to Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine is already sharing this knowledge. This includes making agreements for weapons and technology that they have already proven effective against Russia. In other words, what Ukraine did in the Black Sea was not just a coincidence. It was their own solution. Now it is also becoming a guide for other countries facing the same problem. Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized how important these new agreements are. According to him, this has a huge impact because this is the first time Ukraine has had this kind of relationship with countries in the Middle East. Even though the full details were not released, according to the Kyiv Independent, most of the agreements are about air defense. Among the countries that agreed to this are Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. What they want to gain is not just weapons, but also Ukraine's experience. Ukraine will provide various equipment such as air defense, naval drones, electronic warfare tools, and software. According to Zelensky, these agreements will last for no less than 10 years. In exchange, these countries pay with energy supplies and most likely provide additional financial support. This is a big help to Ukraine, especially while its economy is struggling due to the ongoing attacks by Russia. But just providing equipment is not enough. Proper usage is also necessary. That's why Ukraine has already sent experts to the Middle East to teach how to properly use these systems against the threat from Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. The leaders and soldiers of these countries are very grateful because they're not just buying equipment, they're also learning how to use it effectively. And they really need that. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important oil and gas routes in the world. Since the start of Operation Epic Fury, Iran has blocked it. Because of this, a huge supply of oil and liquefied natural gas can't get out. Almost 20% of the world's supply passes through this single route, and its effects are felt not only in the Middle East. Asia is hit the hardest because, according to the BBC, almost 90% of the oil and gas passing through here is headed to Asian countries. Now that flow has been cut off. And that's why these countries are desperate to find a solution, and why they are willing to cooperate with Ukraine. It's not just the Middle East that's affected by the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Even major countries in the world are already feeling the impact. For example, China. Even though they have enough reserves for 3 months, they still couldn't avoid the increase in fuel prices. It reached around 20%, and as time goes by, their stock is gradually being depleted. In the Philippines, the impact is more direct. An energy emergency has already been declared because of the high fuel prices, and there are days when workers' earnings decrease because of this. In India, however, a different sector was affected. The ceramics industry is affected and employs around 400,000 people. They were forced to stop operations due to the shortage and high cost of energy. According to NBC News, the price of oil even reached $119 per barrel. This kind of price was last seen during the height of the pandemic, when there was a major supply problem worldwide. If this situation continues, it won't just be a temporary problem. It could get worse and become a bigger issue. What Russia did in the Black Sea affected Ukraine and the buyers of their products. But what's happening now in the Strait of Hormuz has a wider impact. Almost the whole world is affected. The countries in the Gulf are at the center of all this. For them, this is not just a security issue. This is a matter of livelihood. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed, they can't sell oil and gas. This means they lose access to their main source of income that keeps their countries running. According to the BBC, 20% of the oil and LNG that passes through here is equivalent to roughly $600 billion per year. Although Iran benefits from some of it, ships doing business with them are not included in the blockade. But for Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf countries, this is a big problem. They are losing billions of dollars because goods can no longer be shipped. And this is the reason why they are looking even harder for a solution and why they are getting closer to Ukraine. The Guardian called this situation the worst nightmare for the Gulf countries because this problem is beyond their control and they did not start the conflict, but now they are the ones directly affected. The operation against Iran was led by the United States and Israel, but the Gulf countries end up in the middle of the conflict, even if they don't want to. As time goes by, they get more and more involved because the problem is not just blocking the Strait of Hormuz, but also Iran's attacks using missiles and drones that reach their areas. The truth is, they no longer have a choice because they are already affected by the conflict, and its impact is being felt in their economy. According to Ynet News, they have already lost about 1% of their GDP. In just 1 month since Operation Epic Fury began. According to Al Jazeera, Capital Economics estimates that the loss could reach 10 to 15%. If the situation lasts for 3 months, it poses a great risk, especially if the United States continues with its plan to send troops into Iran, because the conflict will last longer and its effects will be prolonged. While the Strait of Hormuz is closed, these countries needed their own solution, so they turned to Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky accepted the opportunity, and it's clear that this is a big step for Ukraine because it's not just about financial aid, but also about making up for what happened in the past. Since Vladimir Putin launched the invasion, Ukraine has been attacked by waves of drones, and those drones did not originally come from Russia, but from Iran. According to The Conversation, Russia is capable of producing close to 1,000 long-range drones a day, and most of these are Shahed drones, or versions of them based on Iranian designs that were given to Russia several years ago. This is where the bigger picture becomes clear because Iran didn't just help Russia, it directly affected Ukraine. Now, Ukraine has a chance to fight back in another way while helping countries facing the same problem. So this cooperation is not just simple teamwork, but a step with a deeper impact on the ongoing fight happening in different parts of the world. Iran did this before, and now Ukraine is doing it in the Middle East. For Russia to reach its current level in using long-range drones, it needed help from Iran. Iran sent experts to Russia to teach them how to make drones. In exchange for this,
lumalim ang ugnayan nila.
Now, there are factories inside Russia that are focused solely on making drones based on Iran's design. The Shahed 136, which Russia calls the Jiran 2, is seen more often in the skies over Ukraine than in Iran itself. You can see this in the number of attacks. In February, Russia used 5,057 drones against Ukraine, which is 13% higher compared to January. When March came, this increased even more, and in just 24 hours, from March 23 to 24, 948 drones were launched. This wouldn't have happened without the help of Iran. Ukraine knows this, and they also know that now Russia is trying to return the favor to Iran. According to the Telegraph, Russia has started giving Iran Jiran 2 and Shahed 136 drones. This means that Iran is also benefiting from the modifications that Russia has made to these drones, such as a longer range reaching up to 600 miles and a speed of about 111 miles per hour, costing approximately $20,000 each. Ukraine knows how much damage the Shahed drones can cause, and now something unusual is happening. The method that was used against them is now being used by them against Iran. Before, Iran approached Vladimir Putin to get Russia's help. Now, Ukraine is the one approaching the countries in the Gulf. These are countries that Putin wants to influence through Iran. And it's not just that they're doing the same thing. Ukraine is even expanding it further. Iran's Shahed drones are for attacks. Ukraine needed to find a way to stop this. In a few years, they were able to come up with a solution. They created cheap interceptor drones that directly collide with Russia's Shahed drones in the air. That's why they're destroyed before they even reach their target. This means they're not just copying Iran's tactics, they're taking it to a higher level. And now they're sharing this with countries facing the same threat. In February, over 70% of the Shahed drones launched by Russia against Kiev were brought down by Ukraine's new interceptor drones. These interceptors are very cheap. They cost only about $1,150 to make. So these are even cheaper than Iran's Shahed drones, and especially compared to the expensive anti-air missiles used by countries in the Gulf. Not only that, Ukraine is also making a more advanced interceptor. that can take out an entire group of drones all at once. Under the new agreements, there's a strong possibility that Ukraine will share this technology with their new allies in the Gulf. This is the clear advantage for those countries. They won't just be given equipment, but also the knowledge on how to deal with Iran's drone threat in the Strait of Hormuz. If Ukraine also shares the design of their sea drones like the Sea Baby, these countries will have a cost-effective way to counter Iran's fast boats at sea. When you put it all together, the drone interceptors, the sea drones, and Ukraine's experience in the Black Sea, these countries will have a complete plan on how to deal with this kind of country. This isn't just about brute force. It's a smart approach that can counter Iran's tactics, even without having equal firepower. Meanwhile, the United States is using overwhelming force to address the problem in the Strait of Hormuz. But what Ukraine and the Gulf countries are doing is a different approach. It's simpler, cheaper, and can be used continuously. It seems the U.S. did not expect this kind of move, but it could possibly work in their favor, especially when Donald Trump said that other countries should also help in dealing with the problem in the Strait of Hormuz. And it seems that Ukraine and the Gulf countries are serious about fulfilling this. The benefits for these countries are clear, but if you look deeper, it's even clearer how smart Ukraine's move is. Right now, what we see is the transfer of technology and knowledge to the Gulf to counter Iran. But remember, according to Volodymyr Zelensky, these agreements will last for 10 years. Qatar and Saudi Arabia have already agreed to such long-term agreements, and the United Arab Emirates is also about to follow, according to The Guardian. This is where Ukraine's true strategy becomes even more apparent. Their fight has been going on for more than 4 years, and there still seems to be no clear end in sight because Vladimir Putin is not backing down from his demands. So as the fight drags on, Ukraine is finding ways not just to survive, but to become even stronger. For Ukraine, sharing a large part of their drone expertise now is not just about helping. It's part of a long-term plan. In the future, they can rely on their new allies in the Gulf for money and defense equipment. They need more advanced defenses against Russian missiles, and there could even be deeper cooperation in energy and weapons manufacturing as these agreements continue. In other words, Ukraine is already shaping its own future as an independent country, and they are doing this by engaging with countries that have also felt the effects of Vladimir Putin's influence through the Russia-Iran relationship. This is where the situation becomes unique, something that almost no one saw. It turns out that Ukraine could possibly be one of the biggest beneficiaries of Operation Epic Fury. Their experience in dealing with Russian drones based on Iranian designs has now become their strength. They are using this to prove that they are a more valuable ally than Russia. According to Oleksandr Kryev of the Ukrainian PRISM Foreign Policy Council, this experience can be exchanged for stronger security and a better position in negotiations with other countries. Ukraine is showing that they can provide more valuable assistance than Russia, especially to countries that have long relied on Moscow. And now this is gradually changing. While Putin is trying to get support from Iran amid intense pressure from the United States, Russia's influence in the Middle East is gradually weakening. The countries that used to rely on Russia for weapons and security are now starting to shift to Ukraine. Previously, the relationship between Ukraine and these countries revolved only around trade, like buying a large portion of their soybeans, wheat, corn, and sunflower oil. Now the relationship is deeper. It's no longer just about trade. It's now about security, technology, and long-term cooperation. And this is dangerous for Iran. It's also dangerous for Russia. In one of the most unexpected events in modern world politics, the more than 4-year war has brought Ukraine to a new position, not just as a country fighting to survive, but as an important player not only in Europe but also in the Middle East. However, it cannot be ignored that Ukraine's knowledge of drones cannot be used immediately. It still needs time to be taught, properly put into practice, and become effective in real-world conditions. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The problem is still there, and its effects continue to be felt around the world. And while Ukraine and the countries in the Gulf are busy coming up with long-term solutions, the United States also has its own plan to reopen this important passage. At this point, it is becoming clearer that this is not just a simple cooperation between Ukraine and the countries in the Gulf. It is gradually becoming a larger movement that has an effect on a much wider part of the world. When countries with the same problems start to work together, finding solutions becomes faster. They no longer rely on just one country. Instead, they combine their experiences and proven methods that have been tested in actual situations. For countries in the Gulf, this is important because they no longer have to start from scratch. They already have a foundation. And because they have seen what Ukraine did in the Black Sea, they are more confident that this can also work in their situation. This also affects how other countries perceive it. When they see a group working together with a clear direction, they become more open to cooperation. Even if they don't join right away, they become interested in the possibility of cooperation. In this way, a broader network of countries with a common goal is gradually formed. Even if it's not a formal alliance, it starts with coordination and information sharing. For Ukraine, this is a big deal. In the midst of their fight against Russia, they are able to get support from other parts of the world. It's not just equipment or financial aid, it's also trust in their capabilities. On the other hand, the countries in the Gulf also benefit. Instead of relying solely on powerful countries like the US, they are getting other options that are more flexible and quicker to use. There's another important effect. As more countries use this approach, it becomes harder for Iran to continue blocking the Strait of Hormuz. They're no longer facing just one side, but many countries with their own capabilities. Because of this, Iran's decisions become more complicated. They don't just have to watch the US's moves, but also the possible actions of other countries now involved in the situation. As time goes by, it becomes clearer that this kind of cooperation is not just temporary. This could possibly continue even after the current problem in the Strait of Hormuz is resolved. If that happens, the way countries cooperate may change. It's no longer just focused on large armies or expensive mistakes. Instead, it's about practical and immediate solutions that can be used in real situations. In the end, you'll see that its impact is not limited to just one place. From the Black Sea to the Middle East and even to other parts of the world, the way countries deal with this kind of problem is gradually changing. As this kind of coordination continues, it becomes clearer that the fight is not just about strength, but about the ability to cooperate and quickly adapt. For now, it's clear that it's not just one country that's affected. As time goes by, more places are feeling its effects, especially on oil prices and the flow of trade. Because of this, other countries are taking the situation more seriously. This is no longer just a simple problem involving a few parties. It is gradually becoming an issue that more countries need to monitor, because whatever happens could affect a much larger part of the world.